Welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Here to talk all things hockey are your hosts, Brad Crisco, Ryan Hanna, and Evan Lobsinger.
Did you guys catch that Bruce Cassidy quote from a little while back where Vegas had played pretty poorly? And he's like, the way we played, we couldn't even beat Arizona in January.
Yep.
There's something about the turnovers. He's like, oh, we had 24 turnovers. That wouldn't even beat Arizona in January.
Yep. The Coyotes are there like, what the hell? We're not even in the room and we're catching strays. We have enough of our own stuff going on.
Yeah. That's, wow. Just really pulling that out of nowhere. At least they didn't say Detroit. But they're like, hey, come on.
How was Detroit in January? Was
good.
Had they rebounded by then?
That was when they were starting to ramp up to their quote unquote playoff run.
Yeah. Anyhow, it was funny. He actually, I think, just apologized for that, which,
come on.
I guess makes sense. I mean, I
No,
can see him messaging.
I'm sorry to Arizona. I actually meant Chicago.
Even Chicago would have been like, yeah, that's pretty fair.
Yeah.
We did that intentionally, actually. I could see him messaging Tournier and saying, yeah, probably not the nicest thing of me to do. Anyhow, welcome to the Winged Wheel Podcast, folks. Here to talk about all things Detroit Red Wings hockey, the NHL draft, the coaching and GM carousel happening across the league, and lots more. I am one of your hosts, Ryan Hanna.
I'm the human embodiment of the Arizona Coyotes in January.
And I'm Evan.
I agree with you, Brad. You are the human embodiment of the Arizona Coyotes in January. Evan and I have felt so for a long time.
I very much feel like it.
And I'm not apologizing for that one.
That's okay.
I'm going to get so many comments saying, why is Ryan so mean to Brad?
Well, no, it all works out because the way our dynamic is, I usually give Ryan about 10 before I retort. But then, like, when I come back, it's usually right to his core.
That's a real father playbook right there.
Yeah, I'll forget every insult you've ever said to me, but I'll make sure you remember when I finally give it back.
I'm just waiting for the first time the three of us are out on the golf course and I'm losing in third place by like 40 strokes. That's when it's really going to hurt me.
I'm going to remind you every hole that I hadn't picked up a club in 2 years.
On this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, we are going to talk a little bit about some relevant Red Wings news. On this day, there's two different dates that we'll talk about today. Sebastian Cossa and his season wrapping up in Toledo. Some potential interest in Alex Tanguay across the NHL and potentially the AHL. Our next prospect profile, which is a defenseman who's rocketed up the boards. We will also take a look at the Stanley Cup playoffs now that they're set. Florida and Vegas in the all no-tax state Stanley Cup final. Be hard-pressed to decide who's the favorite there. And then we'll get into some NHL news with GMs, coaches, etc., changing places. And we'll see what else we get to before overtime. Before all that, I want to let you know that this podcast is supported by our Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast if you want to join the so-called Dub Club. You get access to some really great benefits, including our bonus episodes, which record right after these ones, in which everyone lets loose, talks about whatever they want. Evan has free reign, which is always dangerous. And we've often been told it's actually they enjoy those more than the main episode. So thank you for that. You also get access to our Patreon exclusive Discord, which is an excellent community. And you're automatically entered into all of our giveaways. For example, this past season, we gave away 2 tickets to every Red Wings home game, the vast majority going directly to Patreon supporters. Again, that's patreon.com/wingedwheelpodcast. On this day, May 31st, in 2002, Detroit played what is still my favorite game of all time that I've ever watched. Game 7 of the Western Conference Finals against the Colorado Avalanche. 7-0. Chasing Patrick Waugh in the process. The fans in the at Joe Louis Arena all singing na 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 na. It was just the perfect end to what was one of the best series I've ever watched. And obviously Detroit went on to win the Cup that year against the Carolina Hurricanes, who beat Toronto. Gary Roberts led Toronto at the time. And the Hurricanes were backstopped by none other than Arturs Irbe, who had black holes for pads. Those pads were older than Brad.
They were. They're like mattresses.
Maybe literally, actually. It would have been close.
Anyhow, that game, top 3, top 5 for you both?
Oh, easily.
Yeah, 100%.
Who came in after Patrick Waugh? Was that Abisher?
David Abisher.
David Abisher,
Oh,
that's
man,
right.
what a throwback
I
name
know.
that is.
I felt bad for him, too, because I remember there was a pass across the slot, and they ended up scoring on him as well.
A Datsuk one-timer that, I forget the Avs defenseman, who actually got a lot of it and really slowed it down, but it still had just enough to get over.
Yeah, and his pad was outstretched, and it just beat him.
Yeah.
Yeah. And then also in 2008, 6 years later, this is the, the 15th anniversary of Henrik Zetterberg's famous penalty kill, the 5-on-3 penalty kill with the one of the greatest stick checks in Red Wings history on Sidney Crosby at the side of the net in obviously what was a pivotal game. Detroit ended up winning that 2-1 and went on to win the cup that year as well.
I hate that you pointed out that was 15 years ago.
Yeah, that's
craziness.
That's the passage of time is hard to reckon with, but May 31st, good day for the Red Wings.
It is. It should be a national holiday, but we'll keep petitioning until they accept it.
More in Red Wings news. Sebastian Cossa. Max Bultman just recently wrote an article on Sebastian Kossa's end to his season with the Toledo Walleye. I'll link to it in the description of this episode. But Sebastian Kossa's season is over. The Walleye fell in the conference final in the ECHL to Idaho. Cossa had overall a really strong season in playoffs. He ramped up as the season went on. The last game didn't go to plan. He actually ended up getting pulled. I think it was 4 goals on 9 shots. Debatable on how many of those were actually, on Cossa, but still not the way he wanted the season to end. But ended the playoffs, 7 games played, 5 wins, 2 losses, a .917 save percentage, and a .232 goals against average, capping off what has to go down as this is what we want to see from Sebastian Cossa type of season, right?
Yeah. So, retrospectively, we can be very happy with Cossa's season. We saw what we wanted to see. The results were roughly what we wanted them to be. And looking forward, he should never play another game for Toledo. That should be the expectation at this point, because he did so well in Toledo.
That has to be it. Like, he has to do enough in camp next year to make Grand Rapids specifically.
He should be. My expectation would be he's pushing to start in Grand Rapids at the very worst of 50-50 platoon.
By the end of the season, I could understand if at the start maybe he doesn't win the job outright. He had a hard time making the jump initially to pro hockey, so I guess that depends on how his offseason goes and how prepared he is coming into camp. But if he transitions okay, then yeah, I think it shouldn't take too long before he has at least half of the share of games.
Well, for me, yeah, because it comes down to development, right? Cossa playing a third of the games, I don't care what league he's in, that can't be part of his development path right now. He needs to be playing. And I don't think how we always talk about players progressing levels and, you don't want any of their development path to be redundant. He already had a good year in the ACHL. He doesn't need another good year in the ECHL. And considering that's still 2 levels below the NHL, you want him to progress. If he has, 2 or 3 very good years in the AHL before they call him up to the NHL, I understand that. If he has one rough year this year in the AHL, which is honestly the likely occurrence, but then you could see him, much like in the ECHL this year, rough start, get better and better and better, and then build into another AHL season, sure.
Yeah.
But the expectation for me has to be playing a significant amount of games for Grand Rapids next year, and that's not a negative. I'm saying this because he had such a good season in the ECHL, because he did what we wanted him to do, because his development tracked what we would hope a prospect of his caliber would do at that level.
Yeah, I want to call out very specifically, tough though it may be to stomach, it's not common for goalies to go down to the ECHL at any point, like a goalie's drafted where he's drafted, to go down to the ECHL and them come out and have a phenomenal career. Not to say Kossa's locked into that. I think, goalie development is an ever-changing process, and the league has changed quite a bit. But Cossa has a mountain ahead of him, as any goalie does, but he really has a lot of added pressure that he probably doesn't feel and shouldn't feel, but the organization should feel because of the draft stock that they used on him. So him going down to the ECHL, again, it's not like that was a terrible thing, but it has to be a one and done. So yeah, next stop, Grand Rapids for Sebastian Cossa. And you would want him to have, like you mentioned, Brad, a mirror season to what he had in the ECHL, up in the AHL. It depends on the quality of the team. A goalie isn't going to, post an unreal save percentage if his team is god awful. So Grand Rapids has to be better than they were last season. But yeah, with Cossa, I thought after what was a little bit of a rocky start, he took the steps needed to. And like you said, Brad, a goalie of that caliber at that level, he played as you would hope he would. So all good stuff so far. Now on to the next thing. He has to have a big off season, and Red Wings and Grand Rapids really have to focus on making sure that he thrives at the next level. Okay. Speaking of Red Wings, they're coaching. They're looking for Sean Horkoff, Red Wings assistant GM and the GM of the Grand Rapids Griffins, is looking for the next Grand Rapids head coach. A lot of names floating around, some from Toledo. Alex Tanguay's name has been floated there. Alex Tanguay is obviously the Red Wings assistant coach right now, overseeing the power play and a lot of the offense. So, there's when he came to the NHL, it was to build experience and hopefully get a head coaching job one day. And so I could see him, going down to Grand Rapids as a head coach and have his first head coaching gig, period, because he was an assistant coach, I believe, with the Iowa Wild prior. And Tanguay's name has also been attached to the Calgary Flames job. Craig Conroy and Jerome McGinley over there know him and like him, and Elliot Friedman has reported multiple times that they would be interested, which is, so to speak, they are. That's a broad search, Calgary, but Tanguay is starting to get some noise around his name.
Yes, when you are the offensive and power play guy and you are directing the vaunted Detroit Red Wings offense, that's going to get you lots of looks around the NHL for sure.
Brad just hit us with the vaunted. Jeez. You go to school today? You read a book for the first time? What happened?
I think I had a stroke, actually.
It's like when someone has a stroke and they wake up and they have like an accent that they never had before.
Yeah.
You woke up as a really smart person?
Yeah, I woke up and someone actually just hit me over the head with a thesaurus. So I don't know how that worked. But either way, good for Tanguay. And it's not, I'm obviously being facetious, but I like Alex Tanguay as a coach. I understand that his problems with the Red Wings are more the personnel he's directing than what he's doing. Because we did see fundamental shifts in the power play that were better. Some of the people executing it were not great at it. So that's okay. Their 5-on-5 offense left a lot to be desired still. So it's not like Tanguay came in and was, perfect and doesn't have ways to improve. I'm a little surprised that he's getting head coaching at the NHL level looks, despite the familiarity in Calgary, just because he's never been a head coach at any significant level. And his assistant coach experience at the NHL level, though we're not complaining, hasn't exactly been, a banner ride. It's not like he took this extremely pitiful Red Wings offense and jumped them into the top 10 of the league. They barely treaded water as it is. They were one of the worst 5-on-5 offenses in the entire NHL. So, again, saying all that, understanding it's mostly a personnel issue. Surprised Calgary's taking a look. Makes a lot of sense for Grand Rapids, though. A guy who had a very, very long career in the NHL has now got some coaching experience in the NHL, going to Grand Rapids to run a program to help mostly players who have never been in the NHL understand what it takes to get to the NHL. I like that fit for Tanguay. I honestly, selfishly, I really want to see Grand Rapids get a good offensive mind down there, because whatever we can do to get more offense into this organization is a good thing.
Yeah, you want to keep him in the organization, and he is a pick by, Yzerman, Lalone. He's familiar, and you want someone who understands the development. And I agree with you. We saw enough from the Red Wings power play and offense to know that some things were sparked, but the best assistant coaches in the NHL would have a hard time bringing that roster into like a highly productive one. So I would love to see what he can do with a, relatively to the rest of the league better Grand Rapids team, hopefully next season. You don't want them to be as bad as they were last year.
Yeah, when I heard his name pop up for that job, I was somewhat surprised. But I can understand Grand Rapids. That makes a lot more sense to me. Familiar with the organization, understands what the Red Wings are looking for, and can help translate that down in Grand Rapids. But Yeah, the Calgary position. I mean, you interview everybody, and if you see a solution there, then you go for it. But yeah, that one just sort of perplexed me a little bit.
Something to remember is so much of the NHL happens behind the scenes, especially for positions where you can't necessarily see the effects so loudly. Like the head coach gets so much media time and so many press conferences, so you understand a little bit about what goes on behind their minds, and a lot of the attention is on them. And even that, you don't see the way a coach works in the background that often. So for an assistant coach, I would not be surprised if there are completely invisible parts to this. Like, he's great with the kids, gets them oriented in a way that you would never know about because it's not reported on, or is excellent with translating video to getting people to do different things on the ice, or, connects with the guys in a way that the head coach can't, or is really good at, playing good cop or bad cop when need be, or energy. Like, it's all stuff like that. And for him having such a long and storied NHL career, and so many of his peers are now GMs and front office execs, like it just breeds more familiarity. And so I think that's why you see Tanguay's name coming up a little bit sooner than other assistant coaches who have had to go through the grind probably for a lot longer, which I think you're right. Like,
yeah,
they typically do. Yeah. So that's all just conjecture. He seems to be really well liked across the league, and as a player, and now like a good hockey mind. So I do understand it.
Well, and also the dynamic of the Red Wings bench itself could be thrown off if he goes anywhere, because he fits that mold of being very bald.
Hey man, 5 years I'm going to be qualified.
But
I got myself before Brad could get me.
Today wasn't the day. So hear me out. For entertainment of this podcast and actually quality of coaching, and to fit the theme, the new, if Tanguay goes to Calgary, Grand Rapids, the new, we'll call it offensive coordinator of the Detroit Red Wings. Are you with me here? Boos.
Booch. Oh,
Boos.
I don't think he would take that. If you had to say Bruce Boudreau's name that often.
Yeah, oh my, double B's.
Listen, I will pay parts of both their salaries if the Red Wings hire Bruce Boudreau and trade for Zach Werenski.
Evan resigns.
Then I'm really in trouble.
Yeah, we're gonna have to get.
No, don't get me wrong. I don't think Boos would ever accept an assistant coaching position at this point. But for the laughs, for the content, we need it.
Yeah,
we need it. Pay him whatever it takes.
As it is with summer episodes, it's early for us to be off the rails. So why don't I bring us in, and we'll talk about something that's going to be really relevant. The 2023 NHL Draft. We're going to continue our prospect profile series with, whether you like it or not, a very important name within the top 10, David Reinbacher. Austrian player, defenseman, right-handed defenseman, who on some people's lists is top 5, top 6, top 7, and probably the foremost defenseman that's going to be taken in this draft, barring some kind of surprise. So who is David Reinbacher? Is he actually worthy of a top 5, 6, or 7 pick? And is this a potential choice for Red Wings at pick 9?
Okay, so I'll go into who Reinbacher is as a player first before we get into the draft relevancy. So I'll start by saying I really like David Reinbacher. He's a very, very smooth, very efficient, very talented defenseman, excellent skater, excellent hockey IQ, can read the play very, very well. Great gap control, great positioning, very, very mature game for his age, which I'm going to mention, though, because it's relevant. He is a late birthday. He's an October birthday, so he's a year older than most of the players in this draft. So you got to be careful when people use the phrase draft eligible season in the Swiss League versus U18 season, because those are two different things. It is not his U18 season, it's his U19 season, even though it's his draft eligible year. So just some clarification on that. But even for his age, he plays a very, very intelligent, refined game. Easily the best defender, like on the defensive side of the puck in this draft, hands down. So everything you look for in a defenseman from his own red line back is there, and it's polished. He's got some offensive upside. Like he's not inept in the offensive zone. And I know his detractors tend to say, yeah, he's great defensively, but what's there offensively? It's not anything spectacular, but you see the signs that there's at least something there. Again, he's a good puck distributor. He reads the play well, which are the first two things you need to have in order to be a good offensive defenseman. He doesn't assert himself as much as I'd like to see for someone of his skill set. This is kind of why he gets those Mo Seider comparisons, because the, quote unquote top league untapped potential. But I want to differentiate that. When Seider was playing in the DEL, he was a year younger and he was getting far less minutes and he was playing a more sheltered role. Reinbacher is getting 20 minutes a night at a top level team, which is impressive in and of itself. But it's not like he wasn't getting the opportunities to assert himself offensively. He was playing a big role. Now, I personally, and I know a lot of people will disagree with me on this, and I understand why, I don't like the Mo Seider comparison for Reinbacher.
Well, for one, he's like 4 inches shorter.
Yeah. But if we're talking stylistically, not talent level, I'm strictly speaking stylistically, I like him more to Heiskanen. That kind of more efficient, fluid, more cerebral game, whereas Seider has that real strong physical element to his game that I don't think Reinbacher has. Not that he shies away from it, but it's definitely not something he uses often or leans on. The Seider gets brought up because he's right-handed and quote-unquote untapped offensive potential, because obviously everybody thought Seider had none going into his draft. And that's my big concern with Reinbacher is people are banking on that Seider, like, oh, there is offense here, and I'm not sold on that.
Yeah.
It's definitely a possibility, and I know I've said it before, but it bears repeating here. Seider was the exception to that, not the norm. Most people who have that untapped offensive potential question don't ever get to the level that Seider did already. So, again, I like David Reinbacher as a player. I think a lot of his detractors are too harsh on him. That being said, I don't like him in the top 10. This is a classic case of he's the best defenseman in the draft in a very weak draft, so he's getting elevated. It happened a couple drafts ago where all the centers went crazy because there weren't many, and people were reaching for him because it was there. I don't think there's a single defenseman in this draft who's a top 10 talent. That's just the nature of the draft. So naturally, guys like Reinbacher and Sandin, Pellikka, and Willander are going to get elevated beyond where they probably actually fall talent-wise.
I find that happens.
It happens every draft with pick a position. Usually centers and defense, but it always happens, and it's understandable. But that being said, so where I ultimately fall is I actually really do like David Reinbacher. He's probably in the 10 to 12 range for me. So I'm not saying this to say, oh, he's terrible. He's elevated, depending who you talk to, 3 to 6 spots higher than where I have him, which isn't dramatic. So, at least, even though people might be reaching on him in the draft, it's not a crazy reach. It's an understandable reach. But I don't like him for this draft, and I don't like him for the Red Wings at 9. I shouldn't say don't like him. That's harsh. I like him, and I'd be perfectly happy if the Red Wings took him at 9. But there's a pretty lengthy list of players that I would prefer the Red Wings take at 9. And no coincidence, all of them are forwards. Not only because I think they're better, but because I think that's what the Red Wings need.
David Reinbacher poisoned our water supply, burned our crops, et cetera, et cetera. No, I actually agree with you, Brad, on most of that. What I will say is you make a great point about him being an overager. Sorry, not overager. I keep doing that. A late birthday, and we explained that the other episode. Because of that cutoff, he had an extra year compared to his peers who were born before that mid-September cutoff. But I think it's exceptionally hard for defensemen to be so mature and well-rounded defensively, especially at a young age. Now, he doesn't play in the world's best league, but it's not a bad league by any means. So I'm a little wary of how this projects. I agree with you that it's not a one-to-one or really analogous at all to Seider. But I think it is difficult to be a proficient defensive player at such a young age. So I do give him a lot of credit for that. His all-around game, I agree. I have the same kind of concerns, maybe not concerns, but I'm not a massive believer that he's going to be a huge offensive powerhouse. But yeah, a lot of other drafts for the Red Wings, I would love this pick for Detroit. If you could get a who you would view as the Hronek replacement, just in terms of where he was in the lineup, not stylistically at 9th overall. I think that would be an excellent result for 9th overall. But Detroit needs scoring. They need offense. And typically that means forwards. And Reinbacher doesn't have the kind of game as a defenseman that means that he's going to bring that from the blue line. So is it the end of the world if Detroit picks him at 9? No, because I think he's an excellent defenseman. I view him as like a 9, and I could justify the pick at 9. Like, no problem at all. Same as you. I would not be upset, but I would be concerned about what Detroit's plan is for forwards moving forward, only because his peers, like you said in this draft, Brad, are so talented offensively, or some of them have higher upsides that you can take. It may be a bigger swing. Reinbacher is he's a high floor, but it's a safe, like it's a high floor, and it's a really good pick to make. You're pretty certain you're going to get a really good defenseman out of him, but how much offense you're adding to the team is a question for me. So, do I like Reinbacher as a prospect, and can I see the top 10 justification? Absolutely, every day of the week. Is it what's best for Detroit? In my mind, I wouldn't make that pick. It would really depend on what else they do with their other pick, whether they trade it or use it or whatever. But I'd be concerned about the amount of offense that they're adding. So it's not even a reflection of him. It's just the position Detroit's in.
Yeah, for me, David Reinbacher is extremely efficient in what he does. Is he the fastest skater in the world? No, not at all. But his technique is amazing, and he with excellent technique, you can increase foot speed, you can increase your agility. He does struggle against faster players, so that's something to be worked on, and a skating coach can easily work that out of his game. Is he an offensive dynamo? No, but he gets a lot of pucks to the net, which is one of the most difficult things for defensemen to do. He's excellent in transition play. He's got great hockey IQ, and he plays effective defense already at his age. Like, he screams top 4 defenseman to me. And in this draft, it'll just be a matter of who's going to be that team that takes him in the top 10.
It'll be Arizona.
Can you imagine?
It makes sense.
And he's right-handed, right? So teams covet those types of defensemen. Like, he does everything very efficiently. He doesn't really have moments of flashiness to his game, but teams are going to love that. GMs love those types of defensemen. So, you know what? The Red Wings take him at 9. Am I upset? No, not at all. Just like you guys. But like you guys said, the need for centermen and high offensive players in this organization is off the charts. So it wouldn't be my ideal pick, but man, having him to round out your top 4 for the foreseeable future would be excellent. And
getting back to what you were saying about like the positionality there, it's, right D is obviously a position of need for the Red Wings. But the nice thing about this draft is the 4 prominent positions where there's going to be talented players available for the Red Wings are all of the 4 positions they need. But if I had to order them, it's literally going center, left wing, then right D, left D, goalie. Yeah. So it's lining up nicely, but that position of need to me is still the 4th most important of the 6 positions on the ice. So, as much as I like Reinbacher, man, do they need some offense. And coincidentally, this conversation times up really well with the quote Barry Trotz had today, which I absolutely loved.
Oh, so good.
It's the perfect drafting philosophy. And I know when we had Reese Jessup on here, he talked specifically about, at the time, Carolina, how they drafted. Trotz is like, I can go find, 3rd and 4th liners, and you could obviously apply that to 2nd and 3rd pairing defensemen as well. He's like, go find me someone that will bring me out of their seats, like bring the fans out of their seats. And to me, this is kind of where Reinbacher falls. Do I think David Reinbacher would be
So he coached the Islanders.
Yeah, well, I that's probably why he's saying it. He got real sick of having
Please, God, give me someone.
Yeah.
Lou, please fire me. I'm tired of this.
Yeah, and then he went to Nashville and he went and looked and went, this is the same shit.
He's like, I left you for years and you have the same things?
Yeah, so for me, I think
Tolvanen was let go for what?
To me, Reinbacher his ultimate ceiling is probably an above average number 3 defenseman. but that's still a number 3 defenseman.
That's really good.
No, that's really, really good. But I think there's going to be forwards with first-line potential available for them. So Reinbacher might, I know it's a boring conversation, and we talk about this with a million people, but this might come down to a, floor versus ceiling conversation on this pick, because I agree with everybody else and every scout in the world. Reinbacher's got a very high floor, arguably the highest of anybody not in the top 5 of this draft. But I don't think that ceiling is, if I'm looking at ceiling, I don't know if he's top 15 in this draft.
I don't even understand really the conversation that people are having around untapped offensive talent, because I don't, like, guys who do are like amazingly fast skaters or super creative and are playmakers, but I just don't really see that in the game. Like, I see that in most Siders game. I saw that as soon as they drafted him. You start watching it, like, he's had that untapped potential. When you watch David Reinbacher, you kind of just see a guy who's extremely efficient, and he puts pucks on net and they go in, or his teammates bank them in.
It's
like,
like
I
Brad
just don't
said.
see that like elite playmaking or like creativity to his game.
It's like Brad said, like, he's playing a ton of minutes, so it's not the same as Sider, where they asked him really to focus on defense. And it's also, it feels a little bit like you're wishing on a star. Like, oh, maybe there's untapped offense there. It's like, okay, but based on what?
Yeah, that's what I don't understand.
Like you mentioned, Evan. So it's funny because as you were laying it all out, Evan, I was thinking about it and just trying to remove myself from what do the Red Wings need right now, which is offense. And I was like, man, an everyday top 4 defenseman who does everything pretty well, like defense really well, gap control really well. Offense is like, is he Erik Karlsson? No, but it's enough where he'll probably play on the power play to some degree. I'm like, okay, if you're not the Red Wings, that is an automatic pick at 9th overall, if he even makes it to you, which I don't think he will. I think
I'm looking long and hard at Arizona and Philly for Reinbacher's landing spot.
So what happens then? Like, is it even necessarily bad? And I'm going to be hypocritical based on my own analysis from a few minutes ago. If the Red Wings go hypothetically Reinbacher at 9, he falls to them, and then they score Matthew Wood or Oliver Moore or something at 17, or maybe they trade up from 17. You have an everyday top 4 defenseman and that offensive ceiling that you were looking for. Not only will I say that's not bad at all, like that's 2 pretty big birds with 1 stone.
Are we having the
2
exact same conversation about how they have no superstar talent? Probably.
Yeah,
probably. So
is that solvable at pick 9 though?
Maybe
it could be. There are players who have legitimate first line upside. Not likely. Like, again, we talk about ceiling versus percentage or likelihood of hitting said ceiling. But could Ryan Leonard hypothetically be Matthew Tkachuk? Yes, that is in the cards. Will he? It's Matthew Tkachuk. Look what he's doing. It's a long shot, but it's in the cards for him. Could I see David Reinbacher being Miro Heiskanen? No, I can't. Despite the stylistic comparisons, the talent discrepancies there is too severe. If I don't hate your logic, I still think my 9 and 17 logic is 2 forwards, but even if I'm going the inverse, because I think the talent discrepancy between the forward you could get at 9, so let's say Moore, Leonard, Dvorsky, versus the forward you're going to get at 17, Ritchie, Yager, Wood, whatever, is greater than the discrepancy between Reinbacher and, let's say, Willander at 17.
Totally agree. Totally
right?
agree.
So it's, if you are dead set on forward and defenseman in the first round, which I am not, but if you are, for me, the logic is inverse. You take the forward at 9, you take the defenseman at 17.
I would agree.
And if you really want to get aggressive, you got 3 second-round picks. If Reinbacher somehow makes it to 11, or Sandin Pellikka is kicking around at 13, or if you just want to make damn sure you get Willander, you have the ammo to trade up. You can jump a couple teams to ensure you get one of the defensemen you want after snatching what hopefully will be a surefire, productive top 6 forward that's going to help you on the score sheet.
Anyways, a month from now, we'll already have our draft review episode out where we talk about why David Reinbacher being drafted to the Red Wings is perfectly fine pick.
Hey, we did.
Everyone remain calm.
We said it's acceptable. We just said it's not preferred. Like, before I get radioed for this, am I going to flip a table if we pick him? No. It's just not how I would have done it.
Should I look into the camera when I am going to get clipped?
Yeah.
Do I look into the camera?
Hey, our good friends with the Red Wings media team, let us know if our hair's okay.
My name is Ryan Hanna, and I think David Reinbacher is a bad pick.
Don't do that. There's people who get confused about our voices.
My name is also Ryan Hanna, and I am dead set on not picking David Reinbacher at all in this draft.
My name is Prashanth Iyer, and I love trading up to pick goalies.
Hey, you edit this podcast. It's all up to you. What goes out, that's all on you.
You know my editing MO when we get to the summertime. It stays in.
Yeah. The red marker gets put away.
Oh, yeah. Speaking of Prashanth, his obviously him and Sean launched the new show in the Winged Wheel podcast, Content Universe, Expected by Whom. They've released 7 episodes now. The last one was with previous podcast guest Micah Blake McCurdy from Hockey Viz. Excellent episode. Go give all 7 episodes a listen. Their next one coming up is a big one. You are all going to love it. It is planned to drop Friday morning. Tune in. If you don't already, give them a follow at Expected by Whom on Twitter. Really, really, really great. I'm excited for everyone to listen to that. Okay, that is our David Reinbacher prospect profile. Intriguing player. Again, he's going to probably be the first player to go, or defenseman to go in the draft. Is it even a hot take to say Reinbacher, Sandin Pellikka, and Willander are all gone by 17?
I would almost bet on it.
Yeah, right? Willander, the more I watch Willander, the more I'm like,
Well, Willander's making me at least think about defensemen at 17. Yeah. They're the only 3 defensemen that I have in my top 17, or like that I would consider in the top 17, for the Red Wings anyway. But yeah, I've the more I read, the rumors, the reports out there, and look at a lot of rankings, I don't think any of them are going to be there at 17.
Okay, add Simashev in there. Are they all gone by 17? Because I think Simashev goes before Willander.
You think so? That's not what I've been reading lately.
He's getting a lot of noise around him.
Willander's been getting more though lately, and Willander's a late riser, so
yeah,
you never know on those. But I mean, it's the NHL. If you told me that 3 out of every 4 picks are forwards for 16 picks, I wouldn't believe you. But I mean, that would get you to 4, and that even feels forward heavy to me, despite the fact that this draft is so obviously forward heavy. So yeah. I would expect it to go down that way, which, again, for what I want to do in the draft, if you're listening, that plays very, very well to getting a lot of talent at forward at 9 and 17.
Defensemen, you can always count on them to ruin your draft projections and mocks and models. Our last mock, we didn't take a defenseman in the top 10, and we knew we weren't going to do it because we did a little bit of who would we want to take, and the very obvious and correct feedback was, you dummies, you didn't take a single defenseman in the top 10, fat chance.
Yeah, I'm already mentally preparing my conversations about how Red Wings solve the entire second pair at 9 and 17 by picking a left and right shot defenseman.
Simashev.
Reinbacher at 9 and Simashev at 17, and we're ready to go.
And then congrats, our Carolina Hurricanes comparisons are coming to fruition quicker than we thought.
Boy, am I excited to watch a never-ending stream of 1-0 and 2-1 games for the next 10 years.
That's the prospect profile for this episode. We're going to stop before we go too far off the rails. Before we move to our next topic here, I want to let you know that this podcast has a sponsor. Dear Winged Wheel podcast listeners, I'm going to make you a bet. You haven't bought a Father's Day gift yet, have you? Don't worry, the leading global men's lifestyle brand has you and Dad covered. I'm talking about our friends at Manscaped. They're saving the day yet again with the total package for the father figure in your life this year. It's time to upgrade his game from waist to face with this exclusive offer. Have him join the 8 million men worldwide who trust Manscaped and get 20% off plus free shipping with the code WWP at manscaped.com. Nobody grows a better playoff beard than Dad, but that means he needs only the best tools to keep it groomed and ready for the Cup Finals. Tools like the Ultimate Father's Day MVP, the Performance Package 4.0, which comes with the Manscaped Signature Lawnmower 4.0 trimmer, brand new Weed Whacker 2.0, and other bonus products in the kit. And we can't forget about the Moneymaker. Manscaped has absolutely changed the game with their new Beard Hedger Pro Kit for fathers around the world. We all know dads love their comfort. If his grooming routine is already dialed, make sure to hook him up with Manscaped's Boxers 2.0. These are without a doubt the best boxers for men of all ages. Whether he's mowing the lawn, taking out the trash, or golfing in the sun, these moisture-wicking boxers breathe without breaking a sweat. Again, get 20% off plus free shipping with the code WWP at manscaped.com. That's 20% off with free shipping at manscaped.com and use code WWP. Make this Father's Day one he won't forget with Manscaped. As we all predicted, the Stanley Cup Finals feature the Vegas Golden Knights, and that one wasn't actually a bad prediction. I think a lot of people just didn't have them because they would have had to have gone through Edmonton, and everyone wanted to see Edmonton win because that meant more Connor McDavid hockey. So, yeah, the Golden Knights are in, and credit to them. They proved a lot of their naysayers wrong. Connor McDavid who, and they did a good job. And Dallas was a good team. Like I don't want to discount. Like Dallas was built as a team who could have been, you know, the spookiest, so to speak, team in the league with the way they could play you anyway. So they earned their way. And the other side is the Florida Panthers, just as we all thought it would be. Sergei Bobrovsky is revived as a goalie, has found his Vezina form again. They are now a rested team. They dethroned the Boston Bruins, who had a historic regular season and then a historic failure in the first round. They took out the Toronto Maple Leafs, who were seemingly flying high because they finally shook the curse, only to make them look like the Toronto Maple Leafs. And then Carolina, who's getting better as the playoffs went on, and was a team who was, you know, playing under probably the most motivating coach in sports, up there with Dan Campbell. Probably, you know, anyone would run through a wall for Rod Labod. And Florida dispatched them in 4 games. No one saw this coming, and I don't know how I'm still seeing Vegas as the favorite over Florida confidently in some people's eyes. That's just me. What do you make of the Stanley Cup Finals, and what are your predictions?
Well, first things first, I've been seeing a lot of did I see that Matthew Tkachuk is the betting favorite for the Conn Smythe right now?
I think I saw something like that as well.
Yeah, either way, it's like 50-50 in most people's eyes. And I need to start by saying Matthew Tkachuk is having an all-timer of a season. He's at worst a top 3 to 5 player in the world this year, and in the playoffs he's only elevated. You're out of your mind if you think, as of right now, Bobrovsky isn't the Conn Smythe favorite.
He has to be.
Matthew Tkachuk doesn't get his moments without Bobrovsky. The Florida Panthers were one last-second Sergei Bobrovsky save on Brad Marchand from not even getting to Game 5 against Boston. Yep. And then none of Matthew Tkachuk's heroics even occur.
And he won the net. He won the net from Alex Lyon, who deservedly came in as the Florida Panthers starting goalie in the playoffs, because Bobrovsky, since he signed in Florida, was not playing like a Vezina quality goalie. He won the net and then beat some of the hardest teams in the NHL.
Yeah, Bobrovsky's run right now, again, the Stanley Cup final could change it all if he turns back into a pumpkin at midnight. But to this point, is the best run by any goalie in any playoff since J.S. Giguère in 2003, full stop. There's been a lot of tremendous performances then. Carey Price a couple of years ago, Jarro Halaka 2010, tons of performances like that. Bobrovsky's ahead of them at this point. So again, Matthew Tkachuk, historic season, historic playoff, unbelievable.
If he gets 3 more game winners and they win the cup, I could see it for sure.
Yeah, but if Bobrovsky pitches like a shutout or 2 in there, I'm sorry, you're not beating the Vegas Golden Knights without Bobrovsky going Conn Smythe mode. Like, you're just not. I love the Florida Panthers, and they're a better team than an 8th place team usually gets recognized for, but they are not, on paper, better than the Vegas Golden Knights. But what they do have going for them is Sergei Bobrovsky versus Adin Hill.
And immaculate vibes.
Yeah. So I like the Vegas roster better. I like the Vegas forwards better. I like the Vegas depth better. I like the Vegas defense better. But I like Sergei Bobrovsky better. But
it's funny that you say that. Bobrovsky's second in save percentage with 935. Adin Hill is a 937 in his first. But Bobrovsky is 4th in goals against average in the playoffs with a 2.21. Adin Hill is 3rd with a 2.07.
All very fair, but when you actually look at quality of chance and so translate that to goals saved above expected, they've had a very different workload.
Yeah. He's earned it. He's sweated it out.
Yeah, exactly. So I don't think Adin Hill's a bad goalie, but he is not at Bobrovsky's tier right now. But, and I know I referenced it last episode, and I'll reference it again. Down goes Brown. Sean McIndoe did a breakdown of previous Cinderella runs like this, and they almost all end in losing in the Cup final because, the goalies streak, even if the goalie streak doesn't continue like the 03 Ducks, they can't compete with the best of the best of the best, and their luck runs out. So I'm still gonna take Vegas just because, they're the better team. Simply put, they're the better team. Could Florida win the Stanley Cup off goaltending and vibes? Absolutely, it's within the cards. They could sweep Vegas. Wouldn't surprise me even in the slightest at this point. But I'm gonna pick with my head and not my heart, and I'm gonna go with Vegas here, and I'm gonna say 6 games.
The one thing that Florida's kind of been able to do, other than Bob standing on his head and Matthew Tkachuk with some timely goals, is they've just kind of bullied teams around a little bit. They push the line and are over it a lot, and it's really gotten under the skin of the other team. Well, Vegas is big. They play all 4 lines, and they are not afraid of the physical play. So I think that element isn't going to have as big of effect on Vegas as it has on every other team that Florida's ran into thus far. And Vegas's 4th line plays just a handful of minutes a game less than their top line. They roll everybody, and that is going to take a huge toll on the depth of Florida. I find it hard to believe that Florida could pull this off and win this series, but I probably said the same thing about the last 3 ones as well. So what the hell do I know? I'm going to go with my heart. Florida in 6.
Oh, 6.
We're going 6.
I'm also going with my heart here. I've been impressed with Vegas the entire playoffs. I've been impressed with them all season, really. I'm a huge Jack Eichel fan. I love the win-win aspect of the Buffalo-Vegas trade. I was really annoyed by people, counting Jack Eichel down and out on his career way too early. So I love to see his story. Like you said, Evan, they roll 4 lines. William Karlsson is probably the unsung hero for Vegas right now.
Jonathan Marchessault comes out of nowhere and just scores timely goals. Jack Eichel didn't even have a goal in the last series.
Yeah, but he had a bunch of assists, and he set up some key goals.
Well, he didn't put them in the net. What I'm saying is they get scoring from everybody.
In case you wonder what Evan values in the draft.
And not that
vibes.
And not that teams need extra motivation in the Cup final, because obviously everybody's very motivated. But there's something to be said about Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault playing Florida.
Oh, God.
After the you take him and we'll give you him in the expansion draft deal from Florida, and they turned out to be 2 cornerstones of Vegas.
Yeah, for context, Florida in the Vegas expansion draft paid Vegas to take them.
They gave, I think, I might have this backwards, but they basically gave Vegas Jonathan Marchessault to take Riley Smith off their hands.
Which made no sense because Marchessault was a good player on their team at the time.
Yes, so here we are. And the motivation for Vegas is going to be very high. And at least from a neutral hockey fan standpoint, we're getting a first-time Stanley Cup champ this year, which is always a good time.
I want to get to that. I love when that happens so much. As a Red Wings fan, it means the teams close to the Red Wings, if depending on if you count Stanley Cups at all, I know it's in different eras, but Montreal with obviously they have a miles and miles ahead of a lead. How many do they have? 24, 28?
24.
Detroit has 11 and Toronto has 13.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Detroit's 3rd. So anytime a first-time winner wins, it means none of the existing winners creep up on Detroit's count there. But in all honesty, as a hockey fan, it's just cool to see a team, a franchise, a fan base get it for the first time. And to the Florida side of my analysis, I mean, what else can be said about Sergei Bobrovsky? He is a player.
Yeah, that's my line. Back off.
It's the summertime. We're licensing it. I want to see Bobrovsky win more than anyone else in these playoffs. You love to hate him. He's not playing the Red Wings right now, so watching Matthew Tkachuk do his thing, like Carter Verhaeghe going out there. He's another guy who was, given away, really, not really.
Brandon Montour.
Yeah.
Well, Carter Verhaeghe specifically. It's always fun to see Leafs cast-offs succeed.
The Leafs have their success. It just happens for everyone but them.
Yep.
Somewhere Steve is screaming about Tuukka Rask right now.
If you would have told me someone from the Atlantic would win the Cup this year, I'd say, yeah, that makes a lot of sense.
And you wouldn't have thought Florida.
And Florida would have not been in the top 4, at least.
Yeah. So, yeah, I'm also picking with my heart here. I think Florida's been a really fun story, but I'm not upset either way. I don't have any problem with Vegas as a new team winning it. I understand the expansion draft is set up in such a way where this team has a way easier time than other franchises who have been in the gutter. But at the same time, I think it's just the reality of today's NHL, and it doesn't bother me so much.
No, I hate this retroactive look at the expansion draft being very favorable.
Boom, roasted.
No, but it's if teams had just not overthought this, Vegas would have got every team's 11th best player.
Yeah, they really did butcher it.
But the teams just galaxy brained this bullshit and gifted Vegas.
The NHL galaxy branding something?
No,
Gifted Vegas, Riley Smith and Jonathan Marchessault and Shea Theodore. Like the amount of, and William Karlsson, the amount of stuff they got just by other teams being stupid is why the Golden Knights are as good as they are. And it had nothing to do with the expansion draft was too good. And if every team had just said, take our 11th best player. Yeah, they would have ended up with some good players because there are a handful of teams that had 11 really good players. But it would have just been that. But nope, NHL teams love to trip over and shoot themselves. So that's why Vegas is good. Because look at Seattle. They didn't make the playoffs their first year. And then Vegas was Seattle was super aggressive in free agency and trades, and that's how they got good. Mm-hmm. I will hear an argument for, it's not as fun for a team that hasn't, been around for so long to already have their second Stanley Cup final. Sure, I get it's not fair, but my argument to that would be tell your team to suck less. You've had more opportunity. It's not Vegas's fault that you're the Toronto Maple Leafs. But yeah, the expansion draft was not set to make a Stanley Cup contender out of the gate. I do not accept that argument.
Vegas has such a cool or interesting sort of character arc. They go from this expansion team that makes the cup final the first year, everybody's all fired up for them, and then they start just letting guys go, trading them all players everywhere, sort of becoming the team people started to love to hate, and then they free Jack Eichel, and they've had all the playoff heartbreak, so they've had a lot of experiences in 5 years. It's just very interesting to see the progression of that organization in such a short amount of time. And
the one thing I will say, if you're a fan of chaos and entertainment and you don't like this, old hockey man GM, you want Vegas to win because they are the most aggressive team in the NHL in terms of trades, acquiring players. Whatever they have to do to acquire better players, they did.
They basically had to fake the cap for half the year last year, right?
Yeah.
With Mark Stone being out and Robin Leonard and all that situation. So yeah, that organization has been
a dull story.
Yeah, it's not been dull whatsoever.
We'll see how it goes. Again, depending on how you feel, there's going to be an exciting winner either way, depending on which story you like more. But it's going to be a good one. And you know what? Without diving into it too much, it's really good for the NHL that it's two, quote unquote, non-traditional hockey markets. This is how we grow the game unironically.
Yeah, legitimately. You're not getting any new fans if the Toronto Maple Leafs win the Stanley Cup because all of Ontario, for the most part, cheers for the Leafs. You're
actually probably getting less fans because when the city burns down, there's going to be casualties.
Fair, very good point. And a fun market like Vegas, because it is important to note that city fully embraced that team from day one. A team we thought would be propped up by tourists, not even remotely. So, you can talk about it's only been 6 years, but man, they back their team.
All right, let's move on quickly here. More NHL news. The coaching and GM carousel continues. The Washington Capitals bring back Spencer Carberry, who was just recently an assistant coach of the Toronto Maple Leafs. I think a pretty big loss for the Leafs, but Washington got their guy. I think they gave him a longer contract, a 4-year deal, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep.
Carberry goes to Washington. Andrew Brunette is hired away from the New Jersey Devils, where he was laying in wait for Lindy Ruff to be fired, and that obviously didn't happen. And so I think Barry Trotz got a good one in Brunette. I like to see him get another chance. Funny how things shook out with Florida, of course, but I think Brunette did really well there. Hines is obviously out of a position, which is unsurprising. The Toronto Maple Leafs do what was expected, and they hired Brad Treliving. And at the same time, it's reported that Sheldon Keefe may actually keep his job. And I have to say, the end result of the Leafs season being they won a first round, they lost a second round so spectacularly that it actually almost negated the goodwill from winning the first round. Kyle Dubas lost his job because of that, and Sheldon Keefe potentially keeps his, is an insane outcome that even throughout the insanity of what is, Leafs hockey, I would say, no, that one's made up.
Yep. And as a fan of a team from the same division, love this timeline for the Leafs.
Treliving's not afraid to make blockbuster moves.
No. And a lot of people are asking a very good question, which is what does his experience with Johnny Gaudreau and him eventually walking for nothing, how's that going to inform on how he handles Austin Matthews?
A lot of learning experience.
Matthews has the way more leverage, which is insane to say because Gaudreau is a 100-point player, but Matthews it's a whole other tier above. By all rights, he's not going to sign before his no-trade clause kicks in. Why would he? Is he going to come in and trade him? You're not
going to lose those guys for nothing.
But can you trade Austin Matthews right now?
If your balls are the size of this room, you will do it.
He might have big brass ones and do it. I don't know. Very obviously, the structure in Toronto has been brought to light. Everyone suspected it might be the case, but Shanahan's really calling the shots here, or at least way more shots than people would anticipate. I don't think Dubas was a puppet by any means, but he had to run everything up the ladder and had to come back down the ladder, so that is what it is. I don't want to say Treliving's just a yes man, but anything that's going to happen is going to happen in concert with not just ownership, but Brendan Shanahan. So I don't know. I have no problem with the hire. I think based on what's out there, if you're not going to go for one of the assistant GMs like a Ventura or a Tulsky in Carolina or something, then there's nothing wrong with Treliving. I thought he did a fine job in Calgary. Some really good stuff, some really bad stuff. I think you can win a cup with him as GM. It just depends on a lot of other things, but it's a big decision, and almost the hockey gods are laughing putting him in this spot with Matthews being just a juiced up version of the Gaudreau situation.
Yeah, I'm happy you phrased this specifically as has he learned from it, because Gaudreau, he wanted to keep, he took that down to the wire and made the wrong decision there, and Tkachuk forced his way out. Now, obviously, he made
Tkachuk handled it very professionally, though.
Yeah, but Tkachuk forced his way out, so Treliving had no choice but to trade him. So, it's not like he just woke up on a whim and said, "Time to reshape this team." He did not have a choice. So, yeah, obviously he's seen it go poorly, and it'll be interesting to see if he repeats his mistakes or if he's learned his lesson.
Shanahan is. I think whatever happens next, though, is squarely on Shanahan. I don't care if Treliving comes in and makes 3 blockbuster trades and the only one left standing from the entire core 4 is Tavares and his anchor of a deal. Anything that happens from here on out in the eyes of ownership and especially in the eyes of the fans is on Shanahan.
Well, as you change coaches, change GM, eventually the crosshairs land on you, and there's nowhere for Brendan Shanahan to hide anymore. He's the last link in the Shana plan.
Yeah.
So this is the time.
It's very jarring for someone who is a big Shanahan fan growing up that this is now his legacy. This is what people remember more than the 500 goal scorer, the Red Wings legend, one of the last true power forwards. For me, this is all very weird.
I'm glad that it's that way for you.
Thank you. I appreciate that, Evan. Piece of shit. Regardless, actually, you want to know what my funny prediction is?
Boston Pizza gets renamed to Toronto Pizza.
I think now is when the Leafs actually start to find success. And it's a question of, is this Treliving and Shanahan, or is this
just the natural progression of the talent on the team?
Yeah. And currently Dubas is in this holding pattern where some people are saying he's going to take the Pittsburgh job. Some people are saying he's waiting on Ottawa. Ottawa fan growing up, I think Ottawa local.
Wait, what's wrong with Pierre Dorian? Or is it a president of hockey ops position?
There's no guarantee. It's going to be up to new ownership, and generally they might want to bring in their people.
They didn't have the summer of Pierre, I guess.
Yeah,
Too hot. Pierre's too hot. I think that's the issue.
That's true.
Pierre hasn't been the same since you almost clocked him in the Kitchener odd hallway.
That was really the divergent of two timelines.
Yeah.
He didn't miss after I ran into him. So you're welcome.
Pierre, small domino, Pierre Dorian in Kitchener takes a corner too tight on the second floor of arena. Big domino, he makes a trade for Alex DeBrincat and brings him over from Chicago. And that's all because of Evan.
There's no other way to explain it.
We'll see what else happens as the coaching cycle goes on. As we mentioned, Calgary has to hire for Sutter's replacement, and Tanguay's on that list. We'll see where that goes. All right, we're going to jump into overtime. Overtime on this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast, again, is proudly brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to join the Dub Club. The bonus episodes, the Discord, the giveaways, and lots more are your benefits. You help support our support of the Jamie Daniels Foundation and their fight to end substance use disorder. You help support the growth and ongoing production of this show and our expanded content universe, like the show Expected by Whom, hosted by Prashant Iyer and Sean Shapiro. So again, patreon.com/Winged Wheel Podcast if you want to be extremely generous and support the show. A question here from Udalali says, if you could change the divisions, how would you map them? I'm not going to get into the specific teams, but I want the closest thing we can get to replicating the previous 1 through 8 conference seeding for playoffs. And so if that means 4 divisions of 4 in each conference, then I'm all for it.
Yeah, I don't care if it's one big division of 16 teams or I want that playoff format back. Honestly, I don't have much of an issue with how the divisions are shaped up right now, and I don't really know any tremendous way to reshape them that changes anything dramatically, even from a Red Wings standpoint. If you look at the Eastern Conference, which I never want the Red Wings to go back to the West, the only team that's ever really kind of been a rival of theirs that's in the Metro is Pittsburgh. Everybody else you would want Detroit to play constantly, Montreal, Boston, Toronto, and even this emerging rivalry with Tampa Bay, they're all already in the division. So I don't know how much I would change, honestly.
Frank the Tank says, hey guys, if you could choose only one of the following hauls from the first round picks, which would you choose? You walk away with Benson and Barlow, Moore and Yeager, Leonard and Wood, or Sandin, Pellikka, and Perreault. Ooh.
It's definitely one of the middle two for sure for me. It was Moore and Yeager and
Leonard and Wood. That's tough.
Warren Yeager's decent.
I'm leaning that way.
That's one I'm going with. 2 centers, 2 very different players. You get more of a shooter in Yeager. You get the speedster and Moore. Because again, centers can go to the wing, but centers who can play center are the most valuable position in hockey. So yeah, if I had to pick between those, it would be Moore and Yeager, although I'm taking a long, hard look at Leonard and Wood.
I'm kind of leaning Leonard and Wood. I know I'm huge on Moore and I'm huge on getting a center, but Leonard and Wood, like, that's a lot of upside, especially with Wood. If you're a believer in Wood, then that might be the way to go.
Yeah, I love both those players. And on talent, I think I'm right there as I am with Moore and Yeager, maybe even a touch more talent to Leonard and Wood. But that's 2 wingers. If we're picking 2 forwards, it's not a necessity for me. And if that was the outcome of the actual draft, I'm over the moon. But ideally, I'd want at least 1 center between the 2. So if it was like Moore and Wood, that would be perfectly okay with me. Or Leonard and Yeager, whatever.
Brad Hot Stuff coming through Crisco says, not that I'd ever wish anything nice for Toronto, but given what we've seen Bob do this playoffs, wouldn't a hockey trade of Marner for Hellebuck make a lot of sense? Hellebuck wants to go somewhere to win. Leafs have always needed a goalie. The money should work out even with a new contract for Hellebuck, so long as you get it done before Marner's no move kicks in. He has no choice. Cheers, boys. The Leafs may think so. I think Hellebuck is absolutely someone they have their eyes on. I just have a hard time thinking if you have an every season 100-point superstar winger, playoff performance aside, and I think he did a lot better this year, getting a goalie for him just seems underwhelming, no, as a return?
No, I agree. I mean, Aiden Hill is the other goalie. Like, you can get a mediocre goalie and still make a cup run. Hell, the Red Wings did it how many times? Not that Osgood was mediocre, but he wasn't a superstar.
Yeah.
So I'm not a fan of big dollars for a goalie. I'm just not. You can find perfectly adequate cup capable goalies for a lot less, and I sure as hell am not giving up a player of Mitch Marner's caliber to get a goalie.
GH says, thinking about all the draft profiles over the years, are there any players that stand out for you as the biggest over or underperformers based on your personal assessments? Lafreniere and Byfield for me always stand out. Byfield, I think it's too early to say, but I thought he might be better earlier. And Lafreniere, that one drives me nuts. I still feel like something is in the water with the Rangers. Like,
Kakko's lumped right in there with him.
yeah, he's done better last season, and there's less concern about Kakko now.
Well, hey, Peter Laviolette might be coming in, and we know he is just exceptional with the young players.
They're interviewing John Hines, which might be hey, at least it's not Hines. So Laviolette looks great interview.
But yeah, I'll go Lafreniere for me, because with Byfield, I expected more, but I remember distinctly talking about this exact scenario being a risk with him.
Yeah.
Like, was he just so good in the OHL because he was just so much bigger, stronger, and faster than everybody? And when the players catch up to him, he struggles, and that has happened. Lafreniere, I thought, was a lock to be a star. So he's my biggest overachiever. So that could be a lot of lists. Like, it's anybody who we had ranked outside of the top 10 that have turned into stars.
Maybe Lundell.
No, we were pretty high on him.
I drafted him twice.
Yeah,
you did. Yeah,
Matt Boldy jumps to mind for me.
Yeah,
we were definitely too low on him.
Thomas Harley is becoming I don't know if I'd say superstar, but he's certainly had an emergence this playoffs.
Yeah.
The
overperform. There's going to be way more of those just by nature of you're not going to pick out every good player.
What about Barrett Hayton? Overperformer?
Oh wow!
You look at one half of one season, definitely.
You want to talk about underperformer? Jeez.
Yeah, let's not look at 2018.
Yeah. Sorry, Frank the Tank also had one more question. Evan, what's the best round of 18 you ever shot?
70. And I had an eagle on the final hole to break par.
But you said you never had an ace, and that's the only way you're getting is on a par 3 course.
Yeah, that was actually the front 9.
I've never had a birdie, and I almost chipped it in for eagle the last round.
Almost is a very subjective term.
It is, Evan. Statement. It is. And you know what? We're nice to our friends on this podcast.
And then you made par, and then I said, this is how you make a birdie, and then I drained my putt.
You did. Actually, it was ice cold. I was really mad at you.
But I've had, obviously, more than a few birdies in my life. I've never had an eagle, but I legit almost had an eagle. It went in and out of the cup.
That counts. If that happened to me,
I almost snapped my club over my knee. Like, I was so angry.
Danglin Datsuk says, what's been your favorite playoff series this year so far? For me, it was Colorado-Seattle in the first round, but there have been so many good ones. It's hard to choose. I hope the finals live up. Colorado-Seattle is a great answer. I think that might be the answer for me. The second half of Florida-Boston was awesome.
Florida-Boston was the first one that jumped to my mind, and now I'm just kind of running through the rest to see if anything tops that, but I think I'm sticking with Florida-Boston.
Either Seattle series, so I'll go with the Colorado one, which is funny because neither of them are in the playoffs anymore, but that was an excellent series, and the context around it, too.
For me, it's got to be Florida-Toronto.
Oh, yeah.
Toronto breaks the curse. They're free from the shackles, ready to make the run, and then here comes Florida and just bullies them into submission.
This one from Cody Stark, a nice message. Preemptive congratulations to Cody. He says, introducing our newest Red Wings fan, Gordon Roger Stark. As much as I'd love to tell you that he was named after Mr. Hockey or Evan's favorite fictional movie character, Gordon Bombay, those two place second and third, respectively. He's named after my grandfather, Gordon Stark, who fought for the good guys in World War II and rang a Salvation Army bell for decades. He passed away 20 years ago, and I'm honored to name our newest Winged Wheel podcast family member after him. Mama Starko and big sister Elska are doing great. Cody, that is excellent news. We are happy to hear that Mama Starko and Elska are doing well, and welcome to the world, Gordon. Congratulations, Cody. Twice a dad. Brad, any advice?
I wish I had some.
I was
Godspeed.
Yeah.
People joke to me when Hank came along. Yeah, doubling the kids is tripling the work. I thought it was a joke.
I will tell you from the outside, we saw it. When you had Mika, I was fully expecting you to like lose all your energy, and Evan and I used to talk to each other and say, "How is he still bouncing off the walls? It's a little nutty." And then you had Hank, and it's just
and yep, there it is.
oh yeah, you can see the exact moment all the life drained out of him.
The big difference is with one kid, when Mika was sleeping or boring or just doing whatever, I could relax. I had nothing else I needed to worry about. If she went for a nap, I could go for a nap. If she was just quietly playing with her toys in the corner, I could sit on the couch with my feet up and watch TV. Now, 99 out of 100 times, when one kid is not requiring attention, the other one is.
Yeah.
So that downtime just completely disappears because you're always doing something with one of them. And it's not even that it's physically exhausting, it's mentally exhausting because you're never able to hit
off.
Yeah, that off switch just doesn't exist till you go to sleep at night. And even then, it's not always.
It's hard for Brad. He's in a house with 3 people and a dog smarter than him.
I guess now's a bad time to say I'm taking Friday off to just play a video game all day.
He almost killed you. All right, last question from Bill and I, the Thigh Guy. It says, let's say in some alternate universe you win the cup and you get it for 48 hours uninterrupted. Who is the first person you're sending a picture to celebrate with it? Where is the first place you're taking it? Cheers, boys. Oh, that's my dad. But he was my mom and my dad both, but my dad, like, he was the one up waking me up at 5:30 in the morning to go to practice and stuff, and taking it back to sunny Windsor, Ontario, celebrating with him. And there's NHLers from Windsor, so the Cubs have been there plenty of times, but right across the river from Detroit. But yeah, that'd be a family thing for me.
The upside of kids, that'd be the best thing ever to be able to share with your kids. So straight home to hang out with Hank and Mika and Crystal on that one and let them do whatever they want with it. And I'm not a huge party guy, so like quiet 48 hours with the family, have some family and friends over, just kind of chill out. I don't even know if I would ever take it out of the house.
I'd eat poutine out of the cup.
I'd get absolutely buckled with the boys and a party with friends and family, and then just some quiet time.
Punts it into the canal for good old time's sake.
Get a cottage somewhere and get absolutely destroyed.
It's going to be at the bottom of a lake, whichever lake that you're staying at.
Yeah, Lake NASA.
Yeah. All right, folks, we're going to wrap up this episode of the Winged Wheel Podcast. We are going to be back with you on Sunday with our next episode. Again, be sure to keep your eyes and ears peeled for the next episode of Expected by Whom, which will come out before our next show. It's going to be a really good one. Awesome guests that they have coming on. We'd like to thank all of our listeners, the sponsors of this episode, Manscaped. Anyone who's tuning in for the first time, welcome. And those of you who have been around for a long time, we really, really appreciate it. All of our patrons, it means the world, and our name level supporters on Patreon. Arjun Shankar, Yves Bartels on behalf of the Sarah Grand Foundation, Aikfer, Raymond's Missing Tooth, Icon, We Are Geelong, the greatest team of all, Glenn Brabham, The Hat 123, Colton Dietrich, Keenan O'Donohue, Yanni Burgers, Meals on Wheels, Matthew M. Rice, Cider for Norris, Croner's Left Knee, Admiral Matt S. of the Cheesebag Navy, Babe Landeskog, Brad Alatathai Crisco, Carl Bertanen Analuski, Chimmy, Chris P., Citizen High Five, Connor Scovey, Cooking with Cossa, Coyote season tickets in anywhere but Tempe, Dad, Please Come Home, It's Been 5 Years, Denny's Gamer Girl, Derek Enstam, DJ Denton, Give Blood, Fight Probert, Hockeytown Matt, Hassam Al-Qassem, Jay Gollum, Jacob Turner, Joel Miranda, Kalen Wood, Kevin James, King Tone, Marcus, Matt McKay, Michael Edlund, R.A., Red 3, Ryan Hanna, but spelled wrong, Ryan Hubbard, Scott Martin, That's What I Appreciates About You, Wallman's Elite Dancing D, General Andy Bohan of the Cheesebag Army, Sam Bankson, #1 Red Guys fan, A.A. Ron, Adam Gowitzka, Adam Rose, Brad Hot Stuff Coming Through Crisco, Brad Simmons, Brian Vasha, Captain Antonio Gracias of the United Federation of Cheesebags, C.J. Wilkinson, Commander Ben Barron of the Cheesebag Space Force, Connor Leighton, Corey Prida, Darren Fick, Dungeon Master of Puppets, Evans Lost Rangefinder, Frank Stanley, Ferk Bum in a Lemon, All My Homies Use Button a Lemon, Gene Sullivan, Grand Rapids Hockey Guy, Griffey Boy, Instructions Unclear, Cheesebag No Longer Fresh, James Laporte, Jeremiah Adobo, JM Rhapsody, John Evans, John Ingles, Josh Yelton, Kevin McCracken, Quaz, Linda Hull, Maximilian, Melissa Erickson, Ophelia, Steven, Tatar Sauce, The Hodag, and Whoop-de-doo, Yoo-hoo, Poo-poo. Thank you for that, and we'll talk to you Sunday.
Thanks for tuning in to the Winged Wheel Podcast. Be sure to check out wingedwheelpodcast.com, where you can subscribe to the show on iTunes, Spotify, or wherever you get your podcasts. You'll also find links to other ways to support the show, such as Patreon, official podcast apparel, and more. And don't forget to follow the show on Twitter at Winged Wheel Pod. And of course, the hosts at Brad Crisco, at Ryan Hanna WWP, and at Hockeytown Evan.